In the GAMINGbible team, the members playing Cyberpunk are represented by 3 separate yet equally important groups. Those who play on a last generation console, those on next gen machines, and Boon on PC. These are their stories. Bad news for Mike, Cyberpunk 2077 on PlayStation 4 is inevitably the weakest version that the GAMINGbible team is playing right now. For Mr. Diver over here, the game will crash to a blue screen fairly regularly, even with the 1.04 patch.
Anyone wanted to see a jelly roll, they'd sit at home and look in the mirror.
And bugs are abundant, from invisible weapons in V's hands to vehicles screaming through the air to land almost at his feet. Sometimes NPCs are solid, at other times he walks straight through them as if they're ghosts. The game chugs along at a noticeably inconsistent frame rate. Its comparatively low resolution visuals making it look fuzzy and dirty in comparison to other versions, and some alarming physics have us questioning how gravity works in Night City. Mike says, Cyberpunk 2077 on PlayStation 4 just feels depressingly bland, when it promised so much neon-soaked excitement. Yeesh. Shame. Cyberpunk 2077 runs pretty much fine for Ewan on PlayStation 5. It's hardly the next-gen dream, he says, but considering this is still basically the PS4 version of the game on a more powerful console, he doesn't have many complaints from a technical standpoint. Although textures and characters can appear a little blurry at times, and whenever it rains, Night City looks a bit like it's been smeared in Vaseline. For the most part though, his experience has been a pretty smooth 60 FPS with very little pop-in. Mr. Moore's biggest gripe is easily the fact that the game unexpectedly crashes so regularly that I can almost set his watch to it. It's hard to get immersed in Night City when you're constantly concerned about when the next crash is coming. Well, ain't that the truth? Well, what do we have here? James is playing on the strongest Xbox console of the last generation, and it apparently fares relatively well compared to the horror stories seen by our dear Mike over on PS4. While the game did full-on crash on him once during the 7 to 8 hours of gameplay he's experienced so far, for the most part it managed to handle the high demands of CDPR's Bethesda tribute enough to deliver a cohesive experience. Don't get him wrong, there are moments of confusion when guns and NPCs pop in with less warning than ghostly deuteragonist Johnny Silverhand himself, but the game is undoubtedly playable for Jim.
Look, I'm waiting for a friend.
Mr. Daly also notes here not to zoom in on Johnny Boy if you want to avoid disappointment. Noted, Mr. Daly. Moving on. Looks like Christmas came early for Mr. ABDOU over here with his Xbox Series X. He calls this the most stable console version. Don't get ahead of yourself, Dean, it still has its fair share of bugs and glitches, but not enough that it completely ruins the experience. Like a broken record, we're back to the same visual problems. Mr. ABDOU calls it a little rough, especially when exploring the outdoor open world areas.
Up an appetite, just waiting.
Without the next-gen update to add things like ray tracing, it does hold the beauty of Night City back. Quite often, he can leave the apartment to be greeted by a busy street market with a diverse group of characters around. Not very socially distanced of you, Mr. ABDOU. So we finally made it. Phil Boon in the PC version of Cyberpunk 2077. Sounds like a dodgy Harry Potter knockoff. What Boon's experienced in such a short space of time, the game can only be described as breathtaking. Whoa there, I think there are going to be some jealous members of the team after reading this. Taking in the sights of Night City has been a delight for our Phil, with glorious ray tracing and all the shine the Pacifica region has to offer. With that said, Mr. Boon says there's still a small handful of questionable moments even on PC, mostly involving physics and slow-loading content, but these really are few and far between. Luckily for Boon, Cyberpunk 2077 is very much playable, and so far he's not had any major crashes or any instances which have made him think otherwise. Whilst there's still some glitches present even on the PC version, this could be down to the sheer scale of the open world undertaking, and he's hopeful that they'll be resolved across the board very soon, not just on PC. Don't we all, Phil? Don't we all? Court adjourned.